In the clearest sign yet that this show is not for you, HBO actually partnered up with some drag queens parodying this show. Yes, seriously. HBO co-signed and promoted a literal drag queen story hour version of House of the Dragon. That's the direction they want to take this show, and the audience they want to appeal to. My lord, this show is cooked. What's up everyone, and welcome back to HateWatchers. Today we're breaking down and reviewing episode 4 of House of the Dragon, Tumbleton. Let's get right into the breakdown, so here's your spoiler warning. We kick things off with Peter Rabbit on his way to Tumbleton, but he chose a bad time to visit, as some English footy fans are moving into town for the upcoming World Cup match. Lord Douche is bathing in fresh, imported Bravosi breast milk when he's interrupted by Larys Clubfoot's favorite noble, Lady Footly. And having taken over their castle, Douche rises to show them what 2.7 inches of dominance looks like. The lady maintains his eyeline, but her husband is not as strong. And as they leave, the real Daeron gets stuck between a bow and a curtsy and a fist bump. Lord Douche imparts wisdom on the kid, telling him the trick to dominating others is being erect.
When dealing with those beneath you, you must be fair but firm.
Yes, sir.
Later, Douche gets one of those chain letters saying that if he doesn't forward this to 10 castles, his mom will fart in her sleep. Back in King's Landing, Rhaenyra bitches about Tumbleton's seizure getting in the way of her fancy party she planned celebrating her. Then, though she keeps him in chains, Rhaenyra the Merciful tells Maester Orwyle if he remains loyal, he can eat at her table like he's people. But she's quick to make it clear that he's not welcome to her food, apparently. When Rhae Rhae asks Alicent what she knows of Lord Douche, they go off on a tangent about what bad mothers they both are, before Alicent tells her that Super Douche's kryptonite is odors. Rhaenyra sends for Corlys, who in turn sends Alan in his stead, and Alan is forced to watch his dad abandon him for the third time in 4 episodes. Aegon is trying to put some distance between his feet and Larys, but they find themselves at this janky Dead Dragon Funland circus. It's a penny to touch Sunfire, and Larys is quick to hand over all his money to touch those big sparkly feet. Aegon claims the dragon is still alive, but Larys urges him to let go, because even if it is alive, it won't survive what Larys has paid for. Sir Criston Cole and his men finally arrive at the Harrenhal Airbnb for the boys' trip. Here, the show has to give its apparent favorite character Alice Rivers something to do, as she tells them that Aemond already checked out. Cole and Gwaine wait patiently for dinner, but when they're told the chef got lost looking for the kitchen and hasn't been seen in 4 hours, Cole storms off to make war, while Gwaine debates if it's worth it to go looking for the bathroom. Elsewhere, Rhaenyra finds her father's old Lego set. Alan brings important news, but gets distracted by the Legos. He's only just become Corlys's kid after all, so he wants to make up for time lost from his childhood. And Rhaenyra's got nothing better to do apparently, so they put some rats into the city to pretend they're people. And greedy Alan is already asking for a pet cat. Aegon puts away his souvenir from Dead Dragon Funland before heading to the next attraction, Meleys the Dead. Larys then tries to sell Aegon and his grotesque face into the circus, but he ends up having to pay the carnies to take his whiny ass, and they dub him Mangleface. Aegon's already not thrilled with the idea, and he detests the circus's buddy system hand-holding policy.
Fuck off!
In Tumbleton, one of the footy fans commits a yellow card offense, making illegal use of his hands against Hugh the Hammer's wife. Rhaenyra is trying and failing to figure out how maps work when Hugh the Hammer comes in asking for lunch, but Rhaenyra has no time for his voracious appetite, so she sends him to watch over Tumbleton, hoping that'll distract him. Ulf comes across a funny joke graffitied on the wall and he can't figure out why the others aren't laughing. Then he returns triumphant to the tavern, but even though he's famous now, he still has to pay his child support. Lord Douche emerges from the sideline after VAR review and elevates the fan's yellow card to a straight red. It's deemed that he will be banned from the match and receive the same physical punishment as Jordan Henderson.
You will have your own arm broken.
My lord. My lord!
Rhaenyra comes to the Maester for information but is too obvious in keeping her distance from the man. In the Vale, Daemon continues to try and clean up Rhaenyra's messes, but in true Aaron fetish fashion, the Lady of the Vale isn't listening as she's trying to make out with this dog. Daemon, having no time for this, is later seen loading up sacks of dog meat before flying home. But he gets waylaid by Caraxes, who flies him to this damp, dark cave that elicits memories of Mysaria for Daemon. His daughter Rhaena emerges from within, and she's going through her rebellious phase and telling Daemon to call her by her nickname, Nettles. But Daemon can't approve of the new hairstyle. She complains about Daemon neglecting her as a child and forgetting she existed. Then she flies off, and Daemon is already struggling to remember who he just talked to. Douche is preparing his Fenty for the evening when he gets another message, this time from his mother, telling him that she farted in her sleep. And he handles this news very well. Ulf comes to see Rhae Rhae, who he asks for some beer money, one of those couches that unfolds into a bed and like a castle or whatever. But all Ulf gets is a ban from his favorite pub. Sensing Rhaenyra is in a bad mood, he tells her a funny joke he saw on the wall earlier, but Rhaenyra is humorless as always. Rhaenyra cuts the image of a strong, steady ruler, as she gets uncontrollably flustered by mean words posted on her wall. Then she orders her Queensguard to silence all criticism of her. Mangleface comes back from the gift shop with 2 buckets of authenticated dragon shit when Larys tells him he heard that he's dead. So thinking he's a ghost, Aegon starts making a scene. But it's clear Aegon doesn't understand what's happening, and the head carney pulls a knife on him. Having learned from Larys that the quickest way out of these situations is to suck your way out, Aegon gets on his knees. But the head carney makes him kiss his feet instead, and Larys struggles as his robe quickly tightens around the waist area. Torrhen Manderly is petitioning for more ping pong throughout the realm when Daemon barges in and plunks Jace's charred head on the table, having misunderstood the assignment. Oh, Jace's killer. Oh. Then Rhaenyra orders everyone to leave the room immediately, as she can't even rule over her own gas at this point.
Clear the room.
Alicent ponders why it's called a backslash if when you write it you slash it forward, while her feckless daughter struggles to even clothe herself in the background. Then Rhaenyra comes in and asks Alicent to marry her, like the show creators always wanted. But then she walks out as she's so utterly useless that she doesn't know she's supposed to wait for an answer. Then we learn Helaena might be pregnant, and Criston Cole is probably to blame. But Helena's so weird, bugs could be to blame for all we know. With match day upon them, the footy fans take to the streets, and the Tumbletoners flee indoors. Then Hugh shows up on a dragon, just to impress his homely wife. Simp. In King's Landing, the Thought Police take to the streets and censor all funny jokes, beating ass all over town, including this little girl that hit them with a knock-knock gag, and finishing with one guy who told a joke that included the word Oriental. Daeron is snuggling to Sarion when Douche comes in and makes a gay joke, as jokes are still permitted in Tumbleton. Thinking he's on a hot streak, Douche turns his sights on Rhaenyra, making a convoluted joke about her being a woman ruler, a laundry machine, and a vibrating throne. He's just trying to get it out of his system, as he eventually plans to put Daeron on the throne, even if it vibrates. He wants Daeron to prove himself by knighting this fine gentleman, but Daeron kinda screws it up to hysterical effect. But it's the height of summer, and Tessarion quickly roasts up some marshmallows for s'mores to cheer everyone up as the episode comes to an end. And now, we've reached that point in the video where we have to decide if this episode was a great watch or a hate watch. And, would you look at that, it's another hate watch. This episode was an absolute dud and it was immensely boring. Defenders of episodes like this will say this is one of those episodes dedicated to politics and personal relationships, to scheming and political power plays and posturing. But at this point, it's little more than just people talking and doing nothing. I get the feeling that the characters and this story are being written by the kind of people that think just talking about issues and problems is enough, instead of actually doing a fucking thing. And at the focal point of all that is Queen Do-Nothing herself, Rhaenyra. And Rhaenyra is a terrible fucking queen. She's a terrible ruler, she's completely inept, she's weak, she's fragile, and she's too suggestible to be in charge of even a lemonade stand in Flea Bottom. She should write a book called How to Alienate Allies and Win Enemies at this point. And Rhaenyra in the books is also not very good at this job, but the show has gone out of its way to make her worse. By up-jumping Mysaria and Orwyle from their roles in the book, they've propped up these advisors that are constantly in Rhaenyra's ear, and she just goes where the wind blows, letting whoever spoke to her last make her decisions for her, as the show just continues to remove agency from an actual queen. Rhaenyra's story isn't a tragic confluence of events at this point. It's just the story of a weak, incapable ruler who's overseeing a comedy of errors and regularly contributing her own. I genuinely don't know anyone in my life who would want to hear a story like that at this point. There was no Battle of Tumbleton this episode after they cleverly crafted the episode preview to make it look like it was coming this week. They're just that desperate in trying to retain viewers for a little longer through trickery, like all great shows do, right? Anyway, they're slow-walking the least consequential stretch of the book during the Dance of the Dragons, and great writers would struggle to make that interesting. So it's no surprise that these writers have adapted a dull portion of the book story into an even more tedious, boring slog, with only their manufactured girl drama to keep viewers company. Speaking of girls and manufactured, in the clearest sign yet that this show is not for you, HBO actually partnered up with some drag queens parodying this show. Yes, seriously. HBO co-signed and promoted a literal drag queen story hour version of House of the Dragon. That's the direction they want to take this show, and the audience they want to appeal to. My lord, this show is cooked. Now, there was a grand total of one thing in this episode I didn't hate, and that was everything they're doing to build up Ormund Hightower as a villain. He's pompous, ambitious, strategic, self-serving, he believes he's superior genetically, and he has a latent rage coursing through him under his collected veneer. Pretty much everything you want in a villain. He feigns being a just man in public while being sadistic in private, he's actively corrupting Daeron and trying to groom him toward his own ends. And he's not stupid, at least not yet, which is far more than I can say about so many other characters in this show. Now, this characterization of Ormund is almost entirely an invention of the show. Fire and Blood Ormund doesn't get much characterization at all. He's just a piece on the board in the book. And not even a piece that people are overly concerned with. At this point in the book, Team Black is almost singularly focused on finding Aegon, killing Aemond, and killing Cole. Ormund hardly gets a second thought, or even mentions. But with their other cruel big bad villain Aemond hiding behind Alice River's skirts and off-screen for 2 episodes now, the show needed someone else to fill that role. I do think they're at risk of making Ormund too much of a mustache twirler, but for now, I don't hate what they're doing with the character. That being said, because this version of Ormund is a creation of the show, that makes the showrunner look pretty lame when he hops on the Inside the Episode segment, gushing about how brilliant Ormund is, like it wasn't all their own creation. Go find a dark little corner away from the cameras to toot your own horn in, while you keep bleeding viewers, buddy. Speaking of the creators, it's very transparent where their head is at with this adaptation, as they continue to fluff up unimportant characters like Alice Rivers, Mysaria, Rhaena, and Hugh's wife Kat, and all that piled on top of Alicent and Rhaenyra's unspoken love story. It's a woman's world and men are just here to fuck it up. The only problem is the writers were never capable enough to actually write a story like that, so they ended up writing women that are inept, weak, and illogical all on their own. They say to write what you know, after all, and I think from the writers' perspectives, we're genuinely getting that. So when we have Rhaena with her "look at me now, daddy" scene, or this weak lord being cowardly while his wife is the one willing to stand up to the evil men ravaging their town, or this third assault scene against women in 4 episodes, it's just like there's no off switch to this shit. It's constantly being given prominence in every single episode, while their adaptation slips ever closer to female fanfiction drivel. They even had a scene where Rhaenyra makes it explicitly clear that she and her council will have no balls. It speaks for itself. And if you want a nitpick to go along with all that, this episode had the word Terry in it at least 3 times. It's a good word, but when they get stuck using the same word in different instances over and over in the same episode, it starts to come across as amateurish. Just pick up a thesaurus, people. Lastly, this episode and the previous episodes have made a real show of Ormund's sensitivity to smells. He's constantly rearing back from other people's smells and puffing his potpourri, and now Alicent has explicitly told Rhaenyra of this weakness. And I'm smelling some real Looney Tunes shit brewing. Something where Team Black uses the power of smells to defeat Ormund, or get him unbalanced and making mistakes. And that will just be maybe the stupidest thing they've done yet. Building up a genuinely decent villain and having him brought down because he couldn't find a clothespin to plug his nose. These writers are just fucking stupid enough to do something like that. Anyway, this show continues to stray even further from Fire and Blood, and it's almost got 2 feet down in fanfiction territory. They're at like 1 foot and 3 toes. Now let's get into a little book stuff. Though they're pretty squarely doing their own things in their own order at this point, so it's getting difficult to draw real parallels between the diverging stories. But as usual, we're only going to talk about the book version of the events covered in episode 4 and not spoil things further into the story. So here's your obligatory spoiler warning. So as we keep having to come back to, Sunfire seems pretty dead to everyone but Aegon, which we've discussed would change an important event down the road. And I'm not even going to assume Aegon is wrong. Dragons and their riders have magical bonds that others can't see or feel or understand, so Aegon could be right. If he is right, a whole bunch of the characters in this show are just stupid, apparently, both for assuming Sunfire was dead and not just torching the dragon's body to be sure. If the dragon is dead, then the ending will change, and they'll likely miss the biggest symbolic ending to the story, and the imagery that caps off the main tragedy of the story, about a house and a family fighting with itself. Rhaena and Nettles seem to be fully merged now, as Rhaena looks like every fan art you'll see of Nettles, a ragged woman living in the wild with a dragon. Rhaena was pretty insignificant in Fire and Blood, but there wasn't some ongoing drama about her being neglected and angsty, so that's all new. Now, Daemon's relationship with Nettles in the book is interesting, and they look to be swapping out that odd, unclear relationship for Rhaena's daddy issues, and Daemon being shamed into being a dad. Can't wait to see Daemon's story fall victim to this meaningless character and her problems. Aemond isn't missing or in recovery at this point. He's fuming about being outmaneuvered, and he's lashing out from Harrenhal, hoping that Rhaenyra will send dragons to deal with him. Dragons he and Vhagar can kill. Instead, he'll stay at Harrenhal and become enthralled with Alice and do who knows what at this point. Helaena is not pregnant. This invention could be the show's way of including Maelor, one of her and Aegon's children missing from the show. Funny enough, the same missing kid that set off George R.R. Martin griping about the show and the ripple effects leaving out little Maelor will have. Daeron, at this point in the book, is blooded in combat already, and he's not shown to be getting groomed by Ormund. Rhaenyra brought her own maester from Dragonstone, so Grand Maester Orwyle is not fulfilling this role in the book. Ormund Hightower is dead and has been dead by this point, so he's not gallivanting about at Harrenhal. Hugh the Hammer doesn't have a wife in the book, so there's no one like that for him to care about in Tumbleton. Tom Tangletongue, seen here with his buddy Mangleface, plays a role later in the story, so they're introducing him early. And Boros Baratheon not coming to help the Hightowers is book accurate, as he took his army to fight in Dorne because there weren't any dragons there. Which I think is funny, because when it comes to insignificant footnotes from the story, they absolutely nail the lore. And that's the only time they bothered to do that. Anyway, we're officially at the halfway point of the season, and honestly, I can't say it's worth your time to keep watching this shit. And if you want to dip out, I will continue watching it so you don't have to. So you can check back every week to see the latest dumpster fire you missed. Doesn't this Drag Queen Story Hour adaptation just get you really hyped to keep watching this show? Are you going to check out at this point, or have you already? Let us know in the comments. And remember to like the video if you liked it, and subscribe to HateWatchers to stay up to date on House of the Dragon. Thank you for misunderstanding the assignment with me today, and I'll catch you on the next one.